have your camera on. Thank you. That was my early warning to make sure anybody who needs to can blur their background or comb their hair. Here's a quick 1-minute reminder for everybody. If you are a member of the IT Consolidation Working Group and you're going to vote, you will need to have your camera on for the meeting. Thank you, Bennett, Wade, and Lynn, and Tracy.
Sorry, I didn't hear all of that. Who do you want to have cameras on, everybody, or?
Anybody who's a voting member of the IT Working Group. So you've been appointed by your director to represent your department.
Okay. That with me then.
Yep, thank you. All right, we're getting a crowd. Okay, it looks to me like we have quorum. Dana, do you agree?
Yes, we have quorum.
All right, great, thank you. So it's 1 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. We may have a few other people join us as we go. The process we're going to go through today is to have public testimony, findings and recommendations of the report, which will include an introduction and overview of findings and recommendations, and then a summary presentation from the supporting committees that are represented today, and then the opportunity to vote on the report. If we decide not to vote on the report today and we want to defer it, then we'll have another meeting probably in December to vote on the report, or maybe even next week. So we'll see how that goes. Somebody will have to make a motion to vote on the report at the time we get through the findings and recommendations agenda item. So we are called to order. Public testimony. Individuals who are unable to provide testimony at this time will be allowed opportunity to testify when specific agenda items are called. But is there anybody who would like to make public testimony at this time? Okay, not hearing any. Findings and recommendations of the report. The first thing is introduction overview of findings and recommendations of the report. The executive summary. Do we have you, Hahan?
Yes, Doug.
Okay, can you give us a quick overview of the executive summary?
Sure. Let me just share it. Screen. Okay, I'm sharing now. Can everybody see?
Yes, we can see.
Okay. So this executive summary has been put together over the past 2-3 months, and it seeks to really convey the commonly shared thoughts across the committees regarding the IT consolidation and the Act 179. First, we have just a brief summary of the intended outcomes of the consolidation as it is stated in the law and also in the project charter that you all should have access to. Not going to go into details, but it really revolves around leveraging economies of scale, i.e. certain cost savings, and also standardizing the service levels and the quality of services provided. Those would be the main goals really of the consolidation. Then, sorry about the slight mouse issues there. It goes to briefly summarize the options basically on a high level when it comes to different operating models in an organization state as the state as a whole. And here, the last one of these models is really the one that the committees sort of are leaning towards, to the hybrid extended shared services model, which is not going to be would not be the full consolidation, as more of a mid ground there, and so some of the services would remain provided by the departments, while some of the services would be beneficial actually to provide centrally, and we can details a bit later. This image, which is very small, probably on the screens right now, it provides an overview of this model. It's obviously a draft at this point, intending to show the stakeholders and what the main roles and responsibilities between the stakeholders are here, the departments, the vendors, ETS, and their interactions here. So ETS providing the central governance, sort of guidance, strategic level, providing certain shared services, while the departments would leverage those shared services as they would still continue providing their line of business, their business specific, their department specific services themselves for the most part. And all of this is, of course, supported to a very high degree and continuing to be even more so in the future by third-party vendors as well. And then this chapter 3 tries to summarize the findings coming across from all the committees. So first of all, when there would be changes, we would need to really make a really good business case for all those changes before we commit to doing them. We would need to really ensure the capabilities that we currently have, that we have a good foundation on taking more shared services at ETS. That is obviously clear. And that involves different steps to really make sure we are good there before we launch onto something more, taking more and more responsibilities. There are ongoing systems modernizations that we really need to prioritize and focus on, EFS being one of them. DLIR is embarking on a UI modernization, so we're supporting ETS heavily on those as well. And really, if we were to increase the shared services, we'd need to obviously phase them, increase them in a phased manner, we can't do everything at once. So we take on what we have the capability to take on, and sort of do the effort benefit analysis there in how we're going to face them and schedule them as we go into those. Infrastructure and facilities consolidation is happening. And that one, was a specific area for one of the committees, and they probably went to the most in-depth review and analysis of any of the committees, really planning those out and used a third-party vendor to help on that analysis. Jimmy may if there's questions on that, answer more. So then this is an interesting area. The common sort of shared enterprise applications is an area actually that might provide benefits going forward. Now, these are the applications, the types of applications that all departments are using, the HR applications here, or the financial management type of all the sort of the supporting capabilities that all departments have. So there's potential there, even more than we currently are doing, but that requires then further analysis and planning next year and so on and so forth. Those are detailed in the service catalogs that are also part of this document and the appendices. So this is also something that was discussed, that not only ETS taking more, but leveraging cross departments where it might make sense. So there are pockets of excellence in the departments in certain areas that there might be potential and ways to leverage, not just via ETS, but between departments. And at this point, and this is one of the key points coming out of the committees, is limited transitions at this point of staff. And if there are any, then those would be mostly limited to the positions that are generally funded. And then we would need to finalize a more detailed assessment of what do those positions that are generally funded across the departments actually do. If they do things that are actually in alignment with the other recommendations, meaning they would do more like infrastructure or generic end user services type of duties, then yes, potentially could be centralized more under ETS, those types of positions. But the other positions that are not generally funded, very much more difficult to start thinking of consolidation there. The funding model, the financial model, ultimately the finding was that there would not at this time be need to change the financial model at this point. If there were any changes, then that would require a lot of analysis on the actual funding. And again, it would be restricted to the general funds. So data governance and data management was not really a part of any committee, but however, it's a very important topic, and we have a new state CDO. So a lot of work will happen there now, regardless, in standardizing data governance and data management practices, creating policies where needed, looking at the common tooling perhaps as well. And then finally, workforce development and training is a very, very core matter here as well. We need to ensure that the staff has the requisite capabilities to work now, and especially going forward, we need to learn new skills around, for example, AI. That's on everybody's lips right now, and retaining talent. Acquiring and retaining talent always has been a challenge at the state, and Arnold Kishi can, if needed, can talk to more on the details of this area. So those were the main findings, and then there's a short chapter about how we could go about implementing the consolidation regardless of its scope, basically. This was talked in a fairly limited fashion amongst the committees, but these were sort of the main main options here. Some departments, this 4.2, might be even willing to consider moving some of their staff under ETS and might be beneficial. While these would be typically the smaller departments, while the bigger ones, the larger ones, would be much more complicated matter. This enforced would not be a recommendation at this point. This last the chapter 5 seeks to really present the service catalog that was produced as part of this work. This service catalog is meant to be across the state, not only for ETS, but this could work as a model for all departments, how they would structure their IT services. Would need further approval, further awareness and understanding around it, perhaps, but this was created as part of the exercise, and it was used as a basis to do this business case analysis, basically value effort analysis of the consolidation. Which types of services would make most sense in the sense of least effort or moderate effort and the highest value in light of the goals of the consolidation overall. Where should we focus on? Where it doesn't make sense to focus on everything. So the main, the more green, the more opportunities and the better business case for consolidation and there would be. So as we can see, all these infrastructure and platform, certain types of end user services and then professional services would be the most beneficial to think about consolidation at this point, while the department specific, especially the larger department specific line of business applications would be much more questionable to start consolidating at this point. And of course, these would also be leveraging a lot of these, the line of business applications would still be leveraging, and it makes sense to leverage certain types of infrastructure, these weight-bearing infrastructure services underneath them. So overall, I think the committees were not opposing on consolidation, but it needs to be done in a smart manner that really would provide work towards the intended goals of cost savings and better services and more standardized service quality. So these chapters then talk to, yes, we need to really make sure that we continue to have enough current service delivery capabilities. We need to look at service retirements wherever there are something that we don't need anymore. We don't want to spend our resources, time anymore on those. So that is always important to keep in mind. IT planning and IT service management from processes and tools, common tools, that is one important area, not only within ETS, but across the state. Maybe we need to consider a more standardized tooling for IT service management across the state that might be beneficial. Certain policies and standards, ETS can and will continue to work on those going forward. There is a demand for policies and standards from the departments. There's that. Communications and training continues to be important of the services that ETS provides for the staff at the departments and at ETS. And of course, staffing. There's always a question of staffing. If we were to consume more, take on more services, more responsibilities, of course, there would be areas where more staff is needed, for sure. I'm not going to go into details of these tables, but yes, there was analysis across several committees on, okay, what could those new extended services, new or extended services be? And the high-level business case analysis for them and the time span for those. And also there is a high-level roadmap for the actions. It does not go into super details at all at this point. It shows the key areas that the actions would fall on under, from strategic planning and governance to management processes and tools, and then the actual delivery capabilities, and then the actual then the service details of the actual services that were to be extended, and then the human capital and workforce development underneath everything. And then the report goes to the details of the individual reports. And maybe
Okay, thanks,
I would
Jussi. We
stop here.
can
Yes.
stop there, yeah, and then we'll let each of the committees have the opportunity to give a report today. So for those of you that are representing a committee, the first committee in the report is Human Resources Committee. Do we have a representative to report?
Sorry, hi Doug, it's Todd.
Hey.
It's Todd. I can give an update or outbrief on that committee for human resources.
And let me mention real quick, we have 12, so we want to go pretty quickly.
Got it. So I'm going to share my screen. So I'm going to actually show the actual committee report. But as Doug mentioned, I'm going to hit the high points for the group. I know we got a lot to go through. So can everyone see my screen? Should say section 1, human resource. Okay. So this committee actually started with Jennifer Halajian being the facilitator, and the group met a few times. And again, the HR is actually can go to the heart of consolidation, IT consolidation. And if you're looking at the table of contents, I think the group did a really good job at looking at everything from policies and statutory authorities, and doing a lot of analysis on what kind of staff, IT staff is out there, not only with ETS, but with the departments as well. Actually, did a survey too of staffing levels and skill sets. And then they went into envisioning the future, right? What are some possibilities of, we're talking consolidation in reaction to shortcomings, what kind of training is needed, how would they be able to fulfill roles, etc. But even into these to this latest considerations of how will the staffing roles be changing with technologies, or actually the advent of AI, machine learning, and how that's going to affect staffing and recruitment. So let me just scroll through the document, and just if anyone has any questions, feel just stop me. Again, this is the first section. We got the members of the committee. Section 2 is what I talked about, taking a look at what's actually out there right now in terms of definition and any relevant policies. We actually, the committee actually got feedback and inputs from Department of Human Resources quite a bit in terms of definitions on IT, classifications, and positions. You can see here under section 2.2, various policies governing staffing and in particular IT. One area that the committee went into, and actually as a result of our last meeting, we're still in the process of making sure that these numbers and figures are accurate, but they went and took a look by funding source. whether the particular IT position was generally funded or it's special funded or federally funded. Because committee felt that actually it made a difference, in terms of portability and being able to shift potentially people over to a central organization like ETS. They felt there were restrictions on things that you could do. So focus was to take a look at general funded positions too as well, and say, hey, the reality is, if you're looking at moving positions really quickly, we'd probably just be limited to that pool. But anyway, that was one line of thinking too, is just the type of how the positions were funded would be relevant. This next section here is the types of responsibilities and duties when somebody was classified as IT or even non-IT. And again, it was, it delves into details, but it was kind of first cut high level analysis. And I think the committee did a good job at least separating things out, into buckets. And again, a lot of these, these numbers are going to reach out to the committee again, just to make sure they're comfortable with the numbers and the percentages. So here's the heart of the results of the committee, and basically, using a benchmark of how many IT positions to IT users. So that's 2.71% in the industry. We're trying to take a look at what we have here in the state. And surprise, surprise, it's generally below that, what really should be that percentage. So across the board, in general, not finding the level of IT staffing commensurate what should be, compared to industry out there. And again, you can see that in this first sentence here that, in general, folks are understaffed. So it's challenging all over. Next session here is taking a look at, again, kind of forward looking and seeing what really is, what kinds of skill sets should we be looking for that's needed, in this next phase as we head out, with the executive branch and providing services to the public. You can see we have everything from project program management all the way through service management, even specifically taking a look at putting together staffing levels with particular vendor offerings. See Microsoft's on there.
Hey, Todd, try and wrap it up.
Oh, okay, yeah. And basically, it's as a part of that, we're looking at the future staff roles and any recommendations, and we kind of aligned that to, hey, we do need to make improvements, but at the end of the day, we'll go down to the end. It's ready to take a look at more specific recommendations when we do have these shared services identified, but we know there are going to be challenges involved, in particular when we're moving people, where the funding should come from, and to make even legislative requests to do that. So that, in a nutshell, is a Human Resources Committee report.
Thank you very much. Our next committee is Strategic Steering and Governance Structures.
Yeah, it was facilitated by me. I'm going to try and keep this short. So this summarizes the governance bodies that we looked at the committee, and if there were any changes that we would see to be beneficial to the current structure. And overall, not much. Really not that much. I'm not going to go into much details. We're thinking about maybe the ITSC, for example. It's more of an assistive CIO at the moment. Maybe that role could be looked at, but not going to go. These are already quite a few months old findings, but just going to go through here. Some of the there are these sort of, they're formal, but they don't always convene that often. These groups of sort of communities of practice that might be beneficial to reinvigorate a certain people to have a place to convene and discuss matter, prepare policies, prepare standards, in an even more formal manner than now. Data, procurement, vendor management, looking at the IT strategies that the departments might be developing more now, technology and security. Those kinds of matters, I think that could be beneficial area there. And then we looked at maybe there could be, and this is a recommendation, to have a bit more standard across the departments on their level of strategic steering, to have a little more standards there. Other than that, not really that much. I think the current governance model, the governing bodies, they do their job. Oh, IT Coordination Council is perhaps one area that might be beneficial to have a little more like not only ETS informing, but that could be one council that could work sort of more both ways, as more of a dialogue than just ETS informing about upcoming changes. So it could be a place to really discuss more and between departments, the IT coordinators and ETS. And it was as it was originally actually sort of designed to be, as far as I understood. And then on the processes side, when it comes to IT governance overall, deferring to the other, mostly to other committees, especially project portfolio management committee on any process level changes there. And on the tooling side, just summarizing that, yes, we think the committee thinks that it would be beneficial to have a look at, in addition to the current IT governance tool, LeanIX, if we use names, a more end-to-end tooling from strategic planning to operations to IT asset management, even configuration management, more standardized across the state. So yeah, that was it, the governing bodies, processes, and tools.
All right, thank
thanks.
you, Juha. Next committee is Change Management and Communications.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Doug. The OCM team hasn't met yet, as the changes and the details of what's coming next need to be worked out. They will begin in earnest when those are definitive. We'll do some stakeholder analysis, figure out who's changing, what jobs are changing, transitions, and
Kathy, there was a report though from the committee, right?
correct, yes.
Okay. Can you address the report?
Yes, sorry.
You can give us very high level. You don't have to go into a lot of detail.
It's very high level, and it's working on doing the stakeholder analysis, figuring out who's changing and what's changing. It's formalizing that plan that the stakeholders are informed, they know what the changes are and their level of readiness. And of course, it involves communication, which would be the legislatures, the vendors, offices, central offices, unions, and the communication would be from you, Doug, as a CIO, determining what's coming and informing the directors, who will inform their first line leadership so they can help folks through the plan, and employees will be involved, being able to determine maybe the how of this is going to happen. So so those details will all be worked out, including the who needs to be trained in what.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next committee is the Organizational Structures Committee.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I prepared just 5 slides, and it should take less than 4 minutes just to make it faster to go through. So the Organizational Structures Committee included 11 IT coordinators and managers from 9 different executive departments. So we had quite a big team. We defined, organizational structure is defined both vertically and horizontally. So vertically, it's see here. Vertically, it's basically like how many levels or layers are there and who reports to whom, on the top position and within the organization. And then horizontally, we're looking at how are resources allocated and deployed. What are the relationships between the work units, groups, and various functions? So our committee had 4 deliverables. Document the current state IT organizational structures in use in Hawaii. So for this, we gathered the data from the executive departments, including 16 divisions and offices. And how we presented it is in this type of bar graph showing the different levels or layers within the department or division. And usually the number 1 layer is like the director or executive or chief. And typically that's not an IT position, with the exception, of course, of ETS. That would show up as one person on the highest level. So this is, again, for the first deliverable. So moving to the second deliverable, which is research organizational model alternatives based on sister states data. So what we did was the committee prepared a survey, and we had provided that for distribution to NASIO, but it was not approved for distribution. So what we did was we looked at sister states that have developed a lot of documentation and looked at their information that they had, and we put that together into the report. So, efficiency dictates consolidation of resources, but due to federally funding and departments and assets, most of them have or moving towards the hybrid structure. So really, what the committee did was to have a more meaningful report. We looked at what is the organizational structure orientation or operational approach. And so there are asset-based, process-based, service-based, and customer-based. So really, this is kind of the core of what the committee was working on. And the next one was to identify the challenges and pain points in the current organizational structures where IT positions exist. And so the committee gathered this information, and that's in the report that is already been forwarded to everyone. So this is like the listing and a high-level summary of the different pain points that they had reported. The fourth one is recommending the optimal organizational structures to be utilized by ETS post-consolidation. So in order to accomplish this, the committee had identified the various criteria here, the quality criteria, and they even defined what is a definition of fast response to customer questions and fast response to processing speed. So all of these were quality criteria for the organizational structure that they were going to recommend or select for the state. And once they did define these quality criteria, we used the XY matrix, which is a Lean Six Sigma tool, and we weighted these various, actually the executive sponsor had deferred to the committee members. So the committee members weighted the various quality criteria in order of priority. And then the last step was then the committee had then voted and selected using this to come up with a rating score of the different organizational structure orientations. So with this rating score, we can look at it, very simply that 39% had favored the service-based orientation, which is really what we are looking at, the service catalog, expanding
Michelle,
that.
can you wrap it up?
And that's the last, that's it.
Okay.
That's the end. So that's how we arrived at service-based. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you for, I'm sorry I interrupted. I just want to keep everybody moving along because we have a lot.
Thank you. That's
Okay. Next committee is sourcing and procurement.
Hi, Doug. It's me again, Todd Omura, with the Sourcing Procurement Committee update. Just give you a summary. We do have the committee did have a report, so it's in the appendix document. But I just give you the highlights that, the data set that we used was taking a look at our across the exec departments, the spend that happens with IT. So over the course of basically several years now, we're able to take in and look at what we're spending as a whole, and anything that potentially we could look at as one area of potentially consolidating and perhaps making use of things like price lists or enterprise licensing. Again, leveraging economies of scale. We also took a look at the existing price list and vendor list structure to see if anything was missing. And we had some suggestions there about potentially doing our own or working with the state procurement office to actually participate or create our own price list where things are needed. One area, for example, is what happens quite a bit now is the independent verification and validation contracts. So we know that happens year after year. So that's an example of potential prices that we can create to make things more efficient. Other pain points, includes the basically, it's having that capability of looking at things from an enterprise perspective. And so we talked about putting together what we call maybe working groups, or it's almost like subject matter experts on particular technologies or even vendor platforms. We thought that would be a good add to make things more efficient and make sure that we're making the right decisions. And you can see here in the recommended actions section that everything from, if it gets to that point when we're looking at shared services, if there are things that make sense where we feel as a whole to adopt as a standard, whether it's platforms or even particular, technologies, then we can do so. Everything from master service agreements to, guidebooks. That's one area we can do. We already had these set up already, but we call them areas of expertise, where we can designate certain groups or even departments for certain technology areas. Like, for example, one example is the Office of Planning, and we work with them in doing running the GIS program for the state. There are other departments that are invested in that technology, and so it's something that we can build out in the future too for other platforms and technologies. One area we thought has a lot of potential is this idea called contract piggybacking. And this allows for departments or agencies to potentially participate in previous solicitations where it could save a lot of time and make things more efficient. Again, the current law doesn't allow for that, so we have to take a look at working with the proper groups and authorities to make that happen. And that is pretty much it as a summary of the group's report.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Next up is the Vendor Management Committee. We're halfway through.
Yeah, I'll cover that in Bryce's absence. So again, okay, I'll just show this page from the executive report. What this committee actually did is they conducted a user satisfaction survey of the current IT services that the ETS provides, and then based on those, started thinking about not only sourcing options, but also how to really improve those services that were scoring a little lower overall. The committee looked at insourcing and outsourcing, insourcing to ETS or outsourcing to vendors as options, and what kind of methods there could be for those sourcings, kind of vehicles. We looked at not for other vehicles there. The details, yeah, they can be found in the appendix. Overall, the improvement fall under IT service management capability improvements, increasing the service, the awareness, and communication and training, development and publishment of policies and standards in, let's say, cybersecurity, data management, AI, project management, procurement management. We have already quite a bit in place, but further still, mobile devices, accessibility, and then identifying services for retirement and continuously keep doing that, as we then would free up resources for the new services. The heat map for the most benefit, least effort, the highest business value was sort of documented in this committee, although that was worked with other committees as well. The one that it's also in chapter 504 in the executive report now, that was produced through this committee. This committee also looked at on a per service level the services that could be further consolidated, hand in hand with the service utilization committee that Patrick is going to be talking about shortly. So we were really working really closely with some of the other committees, getting the recommendations aligned.
Okay, that's good.
Thanks.
Thank you. Next up is the financial model.
This is Todd again. Let's give you a summary of the results of the financial model committee. Taking a look at the various ways of how not only we, but other departments are funded, for their programs, for the IT expenditures, staffing, software, infrastructure, and taking a look at how things would be affected and how they would support a shared services model. In summary, right? So with the various types of funding sources and means of funding, they're basically beyond general funds. So there's a general feeling about like it would be very difficult to actually be able to use somebody outside of an organization with specific purpose funds or special funds. It would be difficult for another organization to actually whether to procure or buy things, to staff, to support positions, and they would basically have to do, whether it's changing the law or talking about really arranging things so that the funding type or sources are changed. It'd be very difficult to do so. So, we do have, for a long time now, we have this certain types of shared services that ETS is able to take advantage of federal funding. And we do that quite a bit with on the mainframe support side. So the idea is if we could continue that, at least if there are opportunities for shared services, if we could continue to do that, that would be one avenue. But again, we'd get the thinking that is that it would get kind of difficult when you're talking about positions being moved into ETS. But at this point, committee felt that until we see specific recommendations that there was no need to go into that kind of detail.
Okay, thanks, Todd.
Yep.
7.9 is IT network communications and security.
Hello?
Hi.
Let me share my screen. All right, I'm referring to the appendix here. Our team met together and discussed all the various different network and security services that were available. And here's a summarized view of the shared services that were being put forward. Sorry, I lost the page. It was just a simple table to summarize the recommended actions. Give me a moment. Ah, it was working before, Arnold.
All right, can you give us a brief overview? We all have copies.
Yes. So at a high level, we've identified the existing shared services that were available both from the network perspective and the cybersecurity perspective. Recommendation was to continue on. As far as expanding the services, it depended very largely on the capabilities and resources of the departments and the funding sources. So it looked like the smaller departments, agencies that did not have the network staff, there was a lot more desire, pressure to provide this centralized model, whereas the larger, more better funded departments that are, especially the ones that already had federal funding requirements, were able to manage subsist on their own. So over time, it means partnering more together and to find where we can best deliver the services with and expand on the core enterprise services that we're currently offering.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next up is Facility Strategy and Management Committee.
Hey there, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, let me just share my screen. I have the executive summary up from this committee's report. Let me just run through this quickly. So committee members included ETS, DOT, DHR, DHS, DLR, and AG, Child Support Enforcement Agency. The scope of this committee was to assess the current footprint for people and physical assets, which included data center utilization and certainly any future plans for cloud utilization, recommend a strategic plan for optimization of office space and data centers, and identify current pain points and recommend steps to move forward. So ETS, in partnership with Kyndryl, commissioned two studies, two pretty comprehensive studies. One was a data center inventory study, which was completed in May 2023. And shortly after that, the application disposition study, which was wrapped up in October 2023, so last month. The data center inventory study targeted 25 physical locations comprising of 34 agency IT spaces, including Kalanimoku. In short, the data center consolidation study estimated the opportunity for initial reductions in overall space of about 9,800 square feet and a reduction in power of about 38 kilowatts, resulting in annual power savings and cooling of about 180K, 150K respectively. And of course, with continued rationalization, modernization efforts, you would expect that more increases in power and certainly in cooling would take place. Should also be noted that ETS is targeting decommission of Kalanimoku Data Center by 2026, certainly resulting in the elimination or migration of remaining computer systems, communication networks, high volume printing services, anything essential running out of Kalanimoku, which will make way and transform that data center space to be repurposed for general office space. Just kind of scrolling down, the application disposition study targeted 666 apps and resulted in certainly identification of some interesting things. Cloud adoption, currently more than 45% of the statewide application workloads already reside in the cloud, certainly a lot higher than I had anticipated or expected. There are ongoing modernization efforts for legacy systems that are hosted or managed in some capacity by ETS. About 57 mission critical systems that are still on the mainframe and another 9 applications residing on the AIX power environment that are slated for modernization, essentially for decommission. Some other interesting points, I think, in terms of business criticality, over 2/3 of the targeted apps were tagged as mission critical or business critical. There are approximately 11% of the apps identified as retired or abandoned, but have not yet been decommissioned and thus continue to use valuable infrastructure. So there's opportunity there. 1/3 of the active SaaS applications are managed by Tyler Technology, which I think we all know are hosted at AWS. And roughly only about 13% of the workloads utilize internal state-owned shared services infrastructure. So I think there's opportunity there. Just kind of wrapping it up, the 5-year roadmap, you can kind of see it over here, but essentially what it is there's 3 main work streams identified and kind of grouped under data center consolidation, which includes incentive or initiatives, I should say, or projects that call for continued rationalization and modernization of statewide apps and their workloads and infrastructure to Q4 fiscal year 2028. The second one is Kalani Moka Data Center decommission, a continued elimination or migration of remaining computer systems, communication networks, and high volume printing, slated to be decom by Q2 FY 2028. And then finally, mainframe decommission, which is essentially the elimination of the mainframe as a service agreement, slated for Q4 fiscal year 2028. Certainly some of the recommended next steps, I'll just kind of summarize it real quick. Execute application portfolio rationalization study, which is essentially what we were doing over the last 3 to 4 months. That's been completed. Establish an enterprise governance strategy and structure. So really just leveraging more of what we have in terms of, ETS's IT governance and making sure that, perhaps, establishing a strategic steering committee, program office, certainly establishing resources, capable resources to ensure success. Then, not boiling the ocean, but certainly taking the approach of manageable chunks, execution chunks and waves. So that was certainly the other next step, and identifying perhaps which agencies would want to participate. So in the report, there's a lot has been identified by different departments and agencies where there's opportunity. And then, make sure that we don't forget about, defining the cloud operating model, day 2 services and support workforce. The workforce is obviously going to be key to all of this. So the organization being able to train and upskill and look for, partnering opportunities with vendors and other contractors.
All right, Jim, can you wrap up?
Yep. Then really looking at the GPC and looking at perhaps alternatives to that would be attracted to departments and agencies. And finally, looking at the NG and the next generation network and making sure that evolves and aligns to statewide adoption of cloud technologies. All right. That's it.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Next is Service Utilization Management Committee.
How's it going? This is Patrick Stewart here. Want to give a shout out to the committee members who, came up with our report: Darren Cantrell, Garrett Murayama, Ryan Shimamura, Joan De Los Santos, and Dexter Lee. We had these goals as a committee, basically to analyze current and planned usage of resources, forecasting future use, and developing models for best utilization, determining how to use existing assets more efficiently and effectively, and plan uses of shared services, and identify opportunities to leverage alternative models such as managed services, pooled storage, and virtualization. So we came up with an extensive spreadsheet questionnaire to kind of gather all this information. We merged it together, and we basically looked for commonalities across the departments. And then we broke it up into, recommendations for departments to integrate into existing shared services and potentially new. And I'll just highlight a couple in each. Big one was Active Directory. Just, that one's a pretty obvious ideal shared service given the many benefits, such as, giving users a single identity for everything from their endpoint to all their apps, gets departments out of having to maintain and secure their own Active Directory instances. And ETS's instance has multiple redundancies on island and in the mainland. So that one is pretty much, right at the top. MFA, we already use MFA quite a bit from an Office 365 standpoint, but it can be integrated with a wide variety of apps as well. And more departments are starting to use Azure AD for its MFA needs. And I guess the last one would be the VoIP. And in the details of our doc, in the appendix, it does point out Teams calling being used already by multiple departments, and the benefits such as it's good for teleworking, it's more cost efficient, and it's pretty easy to use. For what we identified for potentially new shared services, I'll kind of go in an interesting order. For a few of them, we noticed there's multiple instances of Tenable AD, which is a popular tool. We already use it from a security standpoint, but they have an AD component to tie in the AD and scan it for any vulnerabilities or hardening capabilities. So one thought was to have a centralized instance. There's also network monitoring and config management. There were multiple instances of SolarWinds. So perhaps maybe potentially having a centralized one could be beneficial from a cost standpoint. And all of these tools I mentioned ultimately could basically provide better management of assets. And it kind of leads up to here. So some of these tools could also migrate into ServiceNow. We've came across multiple ServiceNow instances. So perhaps a centralized or at least a parent-child kind of relationship across ServiceNow instances can provide better visibility, better standards, and all of these tools to some degree can kind of feed info into each other, including back in asset management, where ServiceNow has the capability of tying into LeanIX. So that could help with the centralized catalog, but in this case, more of assets, whether it's endpoints or servers, provide better visibility for systems that might fall off the bandwagon and aren't getting properly monitored and kept up to date on patches or whatnot, and it could help improve monitoring the whole assets of all the departments for better life cycle purposes. So those are the more interesting, potentially new shared services we came up with. But we have all this info, including in the appendix. It has reasons, high-level steps where we could define them, and maybe some potentially known limitations or exceptions.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Final group is the Workforce Development and Recruiting Committee.
Hey, Doug, Arnold Kishi, doing
Hey.
a summary report. So the goal of the Workforce Development and Recruiting Committee was to come up with some ideas that would effectively recruit, develop, and retain the information technology professionals that Hawaii state government would require moving forward. So this would include the new folks we would recruit, those and the folks who are already on board, what we could do to develop their skills, and what we could do so that they don't leave us once they get reskilled and trained for the highly competitive and better paying private sector. And the other was to review the differences between hiring civil service IT professionals versus temporary exempt non-civil service positions. And the reason that was added to the Act 179 statute language was that ETS as an organization in its establishing statutes is permitted to hire non-civil service employees. And the conclusion from the committee's review was that the ETS experience demonstrates that non-civil service hiring does make a big difference, that hiring those temp exempt positions can offer much more flexible compensation. We could define much more flexible duties and responsibilities. We might have much more flexibilities in setting minimum qualifications and skill sets. And perhaps most importantly, it's shorter, faster, and quicker in the recruiting and the hiring process, which, as we all know, makes a big difference when an IT person says they're available. Either you offer them the job and say you hired in a short time, or they're off to another position, which since they're in such high demands. So beyond salaries, the report from the committee recommends investing in the employees, which in looking at the best practices in many other states is something they do on a fairly aggressive and progressive manner to have career ladders that define a person's progression from entry level to mid-career to senior management. And they provide all sorts of rotating job assignments and mentorships and promotional opportunities that are pretty well laid out when they first join the organization. This also includes formal training programs uh, for not only skills, but to develop your leadership, management, and administrative skills that's really required as part of the job. Other recommendations would be to provide incentives like fellowships and tuition assistance and other financial support that will help the IT employees develop their skills as they progress through their careers. Because as we all know, a technical skill that we have today is a year from now may not be the skill that we need to do our jobs.
Okay,
I
Any
think that's it.
okay, awesome.
So,
Thanks, Arnold.
Thanks.
I think I missed the Project and Portfolio Management Committee earlier. Do we have somebody to report from them?
Yes, hi, Doug. Yeah, thank
Hey,
you. This is Jussi. So I'm sharing. Hopefully, I'm sharing my the
yes.
report. So we did a survey of the working group. So the working group, you all answered to that survey, and as a result, had a lot of good information. And based on that, we came up with recommendations regarding organizational changes at ETS. You know, when this was specifically about actually, we kind of changed the scope of the committee to project portfolio rather than project and portfolio management, because it was, for example, all the other kinds of portfolios like application portfolio really was excluded from the scope. So we do recommend adding positions for central, basically like a central IT project management staff. That could be then on loan to various major projects at the state. We recommend policy changes, justify projects, kind of more align them better with strategic goals, improve the status reporting of projects, then also define better, better project closure process and roles and responsibilities, make sure that the people who are actually responsible for the projects are not actually deciding whether they are, ready or completed. Improve benefits tracking, and then also definitely would be better to have more guidance, project staffing guidance, benefits guidance, establish standardization on project management tooling, also standards for external project management, meaning vendor-led project management, and then establish some kind of standard for benefit classification. And then finally, something that Juha already mentioned earlier, to recommend, or the committee recommends, a comprehensive look at the portfolio tooling, whether LeanIX can be kind of bent into what we really need, or if it could be amended or possibly even replaced. But that's the major recommendation. Finally, there are additional recommendations just from the various meetings. The committee was quite active. We met many times, and a lot of discussion about improving the 1803 policy guidance, doing kind of making a strategy review, kind of some kind of a frequency of strategy review for IT strategy, and then like I said, aligning project initiation with portfolio level business and IT strategy, And then possibly a big one, change the role of PAC to be more in the front, on the strategy side of approval, rather than on individual projects, and only use PAC in those cases where some particular large project deviates from the strategy. That's pretty much it. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you, UC. So we've heard from all the committees, and I want to see if somebody would like to make a motion to approve the working group report.
I'll motion to approve the working group report.
Okay, Lynn, would somebody like to second
Right.
that?
A question here. Did you want to
Robert.
open for questions, comments?
Yes, we can do that. All right, we'll get a second on the motion, then we'll have questions and discussion.
I second.
Yeah.
Okay, second. All right. So the motion is on the floor, and let's have any questions of the committees or comments, discussion, anything like that we can do. Anybody have Robert, you have a question?
I do not.
Okay. All right. Just being kind. Yeah. That's good. Does anybody have any questions they would like to ask the committee, or any item they would like to discuss from the report? All right, somebody has a hand up. Antonio, Q. You have your hand up?
Yeah, so just, I guess we're voting on whether to, the recommendations report, but how much is this committing our departments to these actions? The problem I see with the report is that there's a lot of high level what, but it's kind of short on the details of the how. And the devil is in the details, right? And that's where we start getting into like who's paying for what and what are we going to potentially lose or gain. So I have some concerns about what exactly we're committing to on this vote to approve this final report.
Yeah, my opinion is a report doesn't commit you to anything. It just gives us a general direction for the state that we don't want to consolidate IT from the departments into ETS, but that we would like to continue to work together on shared services and expand those where appropriate and useful. Does that help?
Yeah, I think so. I just want to make sure that we're not totally committed with no way to back out.
I
think so.
I think, I can't stop the legislature from doing whatever the legislature does, but this is the requirement of Act 179 was to have an IT consolidation working group and to provide 2 reports. One was given last year, kind of after 6 months, and the other one's due now going into this next legislative session. So, what we are saying in our report generally is that there's a long list of things that we could probably do better, but we do not believe consolidation is in the best interest of the state.
Okay, understood.
Yeah, I think that comes through pretty clearly in the report. ETS will probably come up with an action plan to try and further detail out what we think needs to happen next. And a lot of it will have to do with looking at shared services. And I think training is another area that we'll push for. We did put in our budget this year training money, not just for ETS, but for all IT staff in the state. But we'll see how that goes through the governor's budget and then, through the legislative process.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other issues for discussion? Nope. All right, not hearing anything else, so you can vote by raising your hand, be the easy way. If you'd like to give your vote in person orally, you can do that. This is a vote to send the report to the legislature, basically. All right, looks like we have 15 votes in favor. So that is enough votes to send this on. Oh, 16 votes in favor. All right. Thank you very much for attending and for voting today and listening to all the committee reports. And I'm sure you all had a chance to look at the report as well. I don't have any announcements for the good of the order because we do not need to have another meeting. We will finalize this report and send it on to the legislature, and ETS will also have, additional information that we'll prepare for when the legislature has questions regarding any of the items that are there. So thank you so much for participating in this 18-month process. And we really appreciate all that you've done. And I think it has an opportunity to make state better. So thank you and enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.